I started in 1934. I was only 17 years old.
I liked to work for Motorola. I really did, because it was like a family, and I come from a big family.
It's been my privilege to serve our people now for 50 years, and what I can see in this is the fulfillment of each of their contributions.
It was the dream of Bob Galvin to chronicle the history of Motorola. Founded by Paul and Joe Galvin in 1928, the company started with just 5 employees. Now, more than 60 years later, with 100,000 employees and major facilities worldwide, it's time to make the vision a reality, and to extend that vision to join the past, present, and future into a new definition of museum, one that will instill passion for the scientific arts from Motorola's history and experience. Tuesday, September 3rd, 1991, marked the dedication of the Motorola Museum of Electronics, a dedication devoted to the joy of learning and the renewal of our commitment to excellence. A diverse audience of Motorola alumni, employees, their families, local officials, and international delegations attended the event. The day's program began in the museum auditorium with remarks by Bob Galvin, George Fisher, and Bill Wiggenhorn.
Good afternoon. But it's great to have you here and to recognize that many of you are not only associates within Motorola, but also represent some of our major customers and major suppliers. And we're very happy to have you join us in this celebration. As part of this organization, Motorola University, which I'm very privileged to lead, is responsible for the training, the education, the archives of the corporation, this museum, and a partnership center for customers and suppliers that will open next year. So in a certain sense, we have the responsibility and the pleasure to share with our associates the past, to train them for the present, and to provide dreams of the future. And so with that mission in mind, this building will thus be dedicated.
The opening remarks were followed by a ribbon-cutting ceremony, acknowledging many of those responsible for Motorola's foundation, and others representing the new leadership. A champagne reception allowed old friends to share their mutual histories and pride in a company determined to build upon their accomplishments. But it was the tours of the museum and the state-of-the-art interactive video displays that stole the opening ceremonies. The museum displays compel participation. It is unquestionably a hands-on experience, designed to challenge the minds of all who enter. The response to the museum experience was overwhelming.
I think it's absolutely fantasia. The thing that thrills me is what I see is going to happen in the future.
I look forward to showing it to my children because I think they're going to be impressed, and it's not easy to impress your children.
私は日本の OTC という会社の社長でございます。こんないい勉強の機会はございませんでした。
I am very surprised by the depth of Motorola's business institutions, and I could really see from this tour that the Motorola business has led very nicely into the electronics industries, and I can really see the tremendous growth potentials. I'm also very educated by this museum, and I'm very grateful for such an opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, first of all, it's a beautiful museum, and I think it's a very good way for me, who is not a specialist, to learn a lot of the history of Motorola.
One of the things that we understand from our customers and our suppliers is that they want to know who we are, because in the decade of the 90s, the issue of partnership is going to be extremely important. And there's nowhere better place in the world or how to do it in terms of let them know who Motorola is and what it's about and what the culture is and what our history is and where we think we're going in the future than to have them stop by the Customer Partnership Center and the museum.
This museum is filled with lessons, and virtually every lesson can be told in 1 or 2 minutes. And we can learn from these lessons by mimicking our successes and, of course, maybe avoiding some of our failures.
And so, through these lessons and examples which distinguish Motorola through its Museum of Electronics, we are better prepared to address our future.
The museum is more than a story of a company or of technology or of an industry. It is truly the history of a culture. A great company takes creative minds to work, the most dedicated and energetic people in the world, and it unleashes their potential for greatness. Within the walls of this museum, we see a company which truly has the potential for greatness.
A museum is so often typecast as a voice of the past, very rightfully and worthily so. It is our hope that our museum will be faithful to that casting, but we want it to be very much more than that. May this museum be one of those echoes and ever resounding chambers that keep telling us what are the right values, what are the right objectives, what are the right senses of perseverance, and watch how this voice describes to us 50 years from now what greatness was accomplished. And then they'll just go on from there. Well, it's a delight to see that we have arrived at this pivot point. We will merely spin it now on to the future.
When I went to work for Paul Galvin in 1928, about the fanciest tool that the company owned was a good socket wrench set. The company sure has grown, huh? Now we even have our own museum. Some things haven't changed, though. The company's still a family. Bigger, but still a family. My granddaughter works for Motorola now. She's an engineer. Designs cellular phones that fit in your shirt pocket. Beepers that come in wristwatches, would you believe? You know, when you take a look at all the things that are part of a company's past, they can give you a view into the future. We started out just a handful of self-taught engineers and mechanics and salesmen, just trying to get the product out the door. But we had a good time. Still do. We developed the first practical car radio, you know, and wasn't that a doozy? America loved those Motorolas. We were on wheels like no other country in the world, and Motorola was a part of it. A bunch of men and women experimenting. And in those days, radio was still magic.
Calling all cars, proceed.
We helped bring the police into the 20th century. Put big old two-way radios in their cruisers. Real Dick Tracy stuff in those days.
Running down Maple Street with a clock also running.
Today, radios are everywhere, and a lot of them have Motorola on the label. Some are called cellular phones, others are beepers, walkie-talkies, or just plain two-ways. And a lot of it started with those sets for the cops. Those sets and the ones we invented called the handy-talkie radio and the walkie-talkie. A radio used to be the size of a room. Now a GI could carry one in a backpack. Electronics were getting smaller, more powerful, more useful. We got into a new game after the war, TV. Old Paul Galvin saw it coming, just as he'd seen the future of the automobile radio.
In the equipment of the future, the complete...
But even more important, as it turned out, was that a man who worked for him named Dan Noble saw the future in something called solid-state electronics, transistors, integrated circuits, and someday microprocessors. In 1948, Dan Noble moved his part of Motorola out of Chicago to Phoenix, Arizona. In 10 years, Motorola's Phoenix division would become part of the semiconductor revolution. Phoenix was the promise. Phoenix was a fresh start, in a fresh place, with fresh people. Not that we hadn't gotten pretty big in television, but by 1974, we had to be technology leaders, not followers. No more hand wiring, no more vacuum tubes. Technology meant solid-state circuits, which meant miniaturization. Now all the components could fit into a case the size of a paperback book and be assembled automatically. Manufacturing was changing. We'd started the change with radios and those TV sets, and we continued it with every component, every box we built from there on out. Soon we'd be doing it with radios for the space program. That was the start of micro-miniaturization, the start of the age of microelectronics.
Okay, I'm coming over.
Boy, those were exciting times. Motorola was a part of the most stunning technological adventure this country had ever gone through.
Liftoff on Apollo 11.
We were going to the moon, and again, Motorola would be there.
Great shadow. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It's ready, John. Oh, this is going to be some kind of different ride.
NASA asked us to build the first car radio on the moon. But we're a down-to-earth company, down to earth all over the globe. Communications, that's another revolution. A revolution that can't help but make this planet a better place for us all. Because you see, people talking to people make the world go round. It can happen in Singapore, in a booming society that pretty much takes portable communications for granted. Or in Paris, where firemen in an ancient city use the most modern radios available.
Troisième étage, correct.
Rue Charles Cros, 4e étage.
A pretty young model in Hong Kong can schedule her appointments on the run with a wristwatch pager. And in New York City, the market's classic ticker tape is now no farther away than a broker's stock pager. When you're guarding a real palace in Versailles, you use them to maintain the security of a priceless French national treasure.
La ronde au poste de contrôle, nous arrivons dans la galerie des glaces.
And when you're driving a palace on wheels, a Motorola cellular phone comes as standard equipment on every Rolls-Royce Silver Spur 2 sedan. We've stayed friends with our old favorite, the automobile. We've helped make it cleaner, safer, more efficient, and enormously more capable with the help of the solid-state devices and microchips we manufacture. Somehow, we'd become much more than just a radio company. Now we were cranking out millions of electronic components, solid-state devices, microchips, entire computers on a chip. The chips, the chips. There's magic in them. At least Paul Galvin would have thought so, back when he was busy fitting a plain old 6-tube radio into an automobile. But he'd have known what to do with them, how to use them, how to make the world a better place with them, how to turn technology into productivity, just as we have today. Electronics. It's changed the lives of us all, the way we think, communicate, do business, enjoy ourselves. Electronics creates knowledge, inspires intelligence, enfolds the entire world in a network of electrons and energy, they tell me, that someday will be the global community's most important highways. Hard to imagine that this is a road we started down with nothing more than a car radio.